We have some interesting speakers at today's meeting. The first speaker is Jonathan Manes. He is Senior Counsel at the MacArthur Justice Center, and he represented a class of detainees at the Broadview ICE facility who were detained there in conditions that they believed and the court ultimately found were unconstitutional. And Mr. Manes will discuss those conditions and the lawsuit now.
Yeah, glad to chat with you about this case. So this lawsuit is a case that we are litigating together with the ACLU of Illinois and Imerstall. Um, and it's about what has been going on inside the ICE detention facility in Broadview. I think Locke's going to talk about his litigation, which has to do in part with what has been going on outside the walls of that facility. But this is about the conditions and how people are being treated inside of the Broadview detention facility. We were keyed into the problems actually by a Tribune story over the summer where there was already early warning signs that this facility was abusing immigrants in custody there. Um, and as the ICE and CBP operation ramped up, the conditions grew worse and worse and worse. This is just to give a little bit of background. The Broadview facility, it's sort of a small office building looking facility, brick building, in Broadview. It's the only place in the region that ICE has to detain people, and CBP have to detain people. Um, with the passage of the Illinois Trust Act, it used to be that people were detained at county jails by immigration authorities. But that's not allowed anymore under state law. So this is the only place where people who are arrested by ICE and CBP get put, at least initially. Um, it's about 20 minutes outside of the city without traffic. And what we were concerned, I mean, this facility was never meant to be anything but a short-term way station. People show up, are processed, and then are moved along to somewhere where they're going to stay for longer if they remain detained to fight their immigration cases. But what's been happening is that people are held there 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days. We've heard of people being held there for weeks. This is not a facility that's meant for even overnight stays. And the conditions that we discovered were deplorable. So over the course of time, we managed to get in touch with people who had spent significant amounts of time there. Now, this was a challenge because part of the problem with this facility is that it's a black box. Attorneys cannot get, or were not able to get in touch with their clients there at all. It's a little bit better now with the temporary restraining order that we've won, but we're still monitoring that. So you couldn't really talk to people while they were there. So we had to find people once they'd been moved along, either to another detention facility or out of the country, deported. And we managed ultimately to talk to dozens of people and get declarations from about 15 people who were willing to put their names to declarations describing the conditions they experienced. And they were horrific. So the rooms were absolutely packed. People were sleeping on dirty concrete floors. People were sleeping next to the toilets are in the rooms. They're not in a separate area. They're just right there in the rooms. Um, People were sleeping on the concrete by the toilets so that if somebody at night needed to get to the bathroom, they needed to wake someone up, move them out of the way, go to the bathroom within like a foot of a person who was attempting to sleep on the dirty floor near the toilet. Um, the place was obviously severely overcrowded. People describe like, you're just touching other people, even if you don't want to be. Like if you're trying to sleep at night, you're just crammed in. Like one person described it like fish on top of the other. Um, they weren't providing people enough food. This place doesn't have any, unlike a proper detention facility, it doesn't have a food service area. So they were providing people with small Subway sandwiches twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day. And the way they were described to us, these weren't like um, the kind of Subway sandwiches you would order yourself. They're just like a piece of meat, piece of lettuce, bread. That was it. Twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day. And people weren't being provided enough water. So they were given one bottle of water with each meal. So one bottle 2 or 3 times a day. People would ask for more water, they would deny them. Um, there was no medical care, no medical intake. Appears to still be real, no real medical intake to speak of. Um, the only way people get medicine is if family members manage to drop it off, and the ICE officials agree to take it in. We heard of stories where medicine was taken in and then lost. So a person with heart disease didn't have their medicine for a week. Um, we heard other stories of people appearing to pass out, maybe having some kind of cardiac event, unclear, and ICE officials kind of like laughing, jeering, like, as if it was a put on. No soap, no shampoo, no showers, no toothpaste. So people are held for, and they come in, just to be clear, like these are people are being arrested off the streets, going to work in their cars, and they're taken here directly. And then they were just being kept for a week in the clothes they came in on, t-shirts, whatever. Sometimes it was extremely cold, sometimes extremely hot, depending on how crowded it was. Um, So the conditions were horrific, horrific. And we held the TRO hearing. We called five detainee witnesses, and Judge Gettleman was presiding at the case. Agreed. He didn't mince words. Said it was clearly unconstitutional. Uh, uh, Disgusting conditions. So that's one piece of the case. The other piece of the case has to do with due process, access to counsel, and the way that people are being processed in this facility. So, as I mentioned before, um, uh, officials inside the facility seemed were interfering actively with people's ability to contact counsel. So we had, so for, well, to start with, there was no provision for people to make confidential calls with an attorney, just zero provision for that. The only way that people could make calls were on a collect phone call from the holding room. That phone often didn't work. And of course, that depended on people having memorized their attorney's phone number if they had one, which most people don't memorize. And the other way is that while you were being processed, you could make a phone call right in front of the official who was the ICE official who's monitoring you. And in many cases, we were told that the official insisted on having that phone call be on speakerphone so that the official could hear both sides of the conversation and know who the person was speaking to. Asked for the phone number of the person who was being spoken to. So this was not, there was no provision for getting legal advice. People had asked for legal advice. People were told, you don't need it, you don't get it, you don't have that right. Um, in a couple instances, people managed to call family members who then patched in an attorney. In one instance where this happened, the attorney gets on the line, starts talking. The official says, "Who's that? Who are you speaking to now?" And the detainee says, "That's my attorney." And the official says, "You got to wrap up this phone call. Take down his phone number. You got to stop." And then the detainee writes down the phone number. Then the official reaches over and hangs up the phone himself. Um, so, and that person subsequently is told, you got to sign these forms. Got to sign some forms. And the detainee says, "I don't want to sign those forms. My attorney told me not to sign anything." They say, "You have to sign these forms. This is about you being transferred to another facility. You got to sign." And ultimately, this person signs despite the advice of counsel because they felt so pressured, and like they had no option. So that's what was going on inside the facility. We're concerned that they are still,
Jonathan, I'm sorry to
yeah,
interrupt.
yeah.
The forms, were those deportation forms?
Yes, yes. So it's the immigration system's a little complicated, but basically, it seems like for people who are not yet in removal proceedings, they're not yet in immigration court. They don't have a case in immigration court. What they're doing is they're having people sign a form that's known as a quote voluntary departure, which allows ICE to administratively remove them without any kind of process. It's just straight out of the country. You never see a judge, never have a right to assert any defenses to removal, whether you're even removable, whether you have a fear of asylum, if you have a claim for asylum or withholding of removal because of a fear of being returned. None of that. It's just straight out of the country, no court process. And those forms are apparently not being translated. We're going to get copies of these soon. Um, people are being, we had someone testify at our hearing who said that she was told that unless she signed, she was not going to be released from that horrible place in Broadview. Until she signed, she was going to stay there. Other people are told it's better for you to sign this because if you don't sign, then you'll have to go through the deportation process. You'll just end up being detained for longer. Um, and people, I talked to somebody very recently, yesterday, who said, I'd like to talk to a lawyer and, before I sign anything, and they didn't make any provision for that. Um, and people don't know their rights, and they're not told their rights. It seems like the MO is to try to get as many people to be deported without process as possible. So this is another thing that our lawsuit addresses, the sort of coerced or unknowing involuntary signatures. And just to cut to the end of this, or the current state of play, we had a full day hearing where we presented testimony of 5 former detainees, 2 attorneys of detainees. Um, and the judge found that we were likely to succeed on the merits of our constitutional claims, and that we were entitled to temporary relief pending a PI hearing. Judge Gettleman entered a very, very good temporary restraining order that requires minimum basic humane conditions, things like enough space to sleep, a bedding mat, a clock that prominently displays the time and date because people did not know whether it was day or night or what day of the week it was. Um, Enough soap, towel, paper, toilet paper, oral hygiene products, menstrual products for women, clean toilet facilities, the ability to shower at least once every 2 days, as much water as people request, 3 square meals a day that meet U.S. recommended daily uh, allowances, um, telephone service for detainees to communicate with counsel in private and without cost, um, prescribed medication, um, that detainee communications with attorneys need to be unmonitored and private, a list of pro bono attorneys that so people can try to call a pro bono attorney. And then another issue I didn't mention, people were being grabbed on the streets, put in this facility, and nobody knew where they were because the ICE online detainee locator was not being updated. The only way people can find out where a person is once they're swept into the ICE detention system is this online detainee locator. And for people for days were not listed where they were. People assumed they were at Broadview, but could not figure out where their loved ones were or where their clients were because they weren't listed. So the TRO requires them to promptly put people into the online detainee locator system. And then with respect to this issue of coerced signatures, the TRO orders that uh, defendants can't misrepresent the contents of any papers and requires all papers be provided in both Spanish and English, with an opportunity, enough time for people to read and understand those papers. We have serious concerns that those provisions may not be being followed. And the counsel access has still been an issue. We have 2 instances where people are calling the phone number that now they're supposed to call. They're told, oh, we'll get back to you in 48 hours. They never hear back. Presumably the client is long gone by the time 48 hours is up. So attorneys aren't able to speak with their clients while they're detained here in Chicago. So we're now gearing up. We have a PI hearing that's scheduled for December 17th. So we are in the midst of expedited.
PPI is preliminary injunction for those non-lawyers who are on the call.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, we have a preliminary injunction hearing on December 17th, and the idea there is that we hope that at the conclusion of that hearing, the judge will order similar, maybe broader relief that will be in place until the end of the case, until we litigate the case to completion to a final judgment. And as part of that discovery, we were able to inspect the facility yesterday, together with an expert that we've hired. And the magistrate judge actually accompanied us on that inspection of the facility yesterday. So yeah, we've made good progress, but a long way to go.
Well, thank you very much. Does anyone have questions for Jonathan?
Yes. Was ICE in compliance with the TRO based on your observations?
Um, Some provisions. So one thing we did note is that the population is much smaller. People filtered in over the course of the day. So some of the issues that flowed from overcrowding, like insufficient area to sleep, that sort of thing, seems to they're they've they're just moving people along much faster, it seems like. Um, it's difficult for us to know whether they're compliant with all the provisions. For example, the food requirements. It seems like we saw Subway sandwiches still. So I don't know. I don't know whether they're compliant. My understanding is that and we only were there for 4 hours, so we can't see what happened morning, middle of the day, afternoon. I don't know if toothbrushes are issued. I don't know if people are giving bedding, because we were just there in the middle of the day. Um, we're gonna learn more as we get discovery and depositions with respect to how people are being processed through the facility, what the forms look like that people are being given, whether they're properly translated. And just even before doing the inspection, um, we are concerned that the attorney access, it's just not working properly. I think they're trying to fix it. There's now a room that is separate room with a telephone that they tell us is the room where unmonitored phone calls to attorneys happen or are supposed to happen. But as I mentioned, we were in touch with an attorney who tried twice to call to talk with their client and was never able to get a phone call because she was told, we'll get back to you in 48 hours. So that's not in our mind compliance. And the judge has been alerted about that. So, some of the conditions might be in compliance. It's hard for us to tell based on the inspection, because we weren't there for 24 hours. But uh, but it seemed pretty clear to me that they've made an effort to shrink the population. It also, I can just tell you, it smelled like bleach. The place had been cleaned before we arrived. I mean, a federal judge is coming to visit. It's not going to look the way it looked 2 weeks ago. So there was still some trash on the ground, but uh, it smelled like bleach.
Jonathan, one follow up. I can talk to you offline, but I was outside the facility yesterday morning, and I didn't personally observe it, but I spoke with a protester who watched a bus get loaded up at just prior to 8 a.m., which would have been 3 hours before the magistrate judge arrived. I recorded her statement on video, and I'm happy to talk to you offline, but just wanted to let you know that the impression was that they were very quickly, getting ready to put on a show for the magistrate judge. That's all.
That is my impression too. We Everybody who was there had been there for a very short amount of time when we were there.
Do you know
So
where they moved them, Jonathan?
I don't. So, but in general, I can tell you that, they are, some people are being moved to county jails in Michigan. No, sorry, county jails in Indiana, Wisconsin, Dodge County, Clay County in Indiana, Dodge County in Wisconsin. A lot of people were being taken to a private facility in uh, Western Michigan in Baldwin, the North Lake Detention Facility. It seemed like they're getting ready to send a whole bunch of people to Texas, to be held in immigration detention in Texas. The thing about the immigration detention system is that it's sort of like BOP. They can take you anywhere in the country. And the trouble is that it also that often determines the venue of your immigration hearings. So people in Chicago end up being in immigration court in Texas, detained in Texas, where they have no family, no connections, no community, no one able to like find a lawyer for them, where legal resources are extremely thin on the ground. So people are just being spirited away. I suspect that in an effort to shrink the population, they've just been making it a priority to move people out of Broadview as quickly as they possibly can to wherever they can possibly move them.
Do they provide any statistics on how many people are moving through there or through Broadview or their identities when they've been moved on?
We're trying to get that through discovery. That's one of the things that they've told us that we're going to get, but we'll see what kind of records they keep.
Any other questions for Jonathan? All right. Well, thank you very much for pinch hitting at the last minute. Very informative talk, and obviously we'll be